Welcome to our inaugural monthly coaching call. I am Joe Halpern, CIO of Fountainhead Asset Management, an outsourced chief investment office platform. Fountainhead has identified 4 gating issues to being a fabulously successful advisor. And those are scale, time, service, and differentiation. Our outsourced chief investment office provides high quality institutional level services that allow tremendous leverage and efficiency to our partnered advisors. So we assist materially in solving components of all 4. But there are areas we are not expert in, which could further help in scaling your business. And that is where we lean on the expert advisor coaching of Michael Silver, who we're really happy to have on the call today. In our monthly coaching call focused on working on the business rather than being caught in the business. It's all part of our ultimate goal of exponential growth for our partners and for us. This is the first of our monthly coaching calls focusing on pushing through those universal gating issues and getting to the next level of managed assets. This month's focus is on value proposition and your story. Michael, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Joe. I'm just going to share my screen, make sure everybody can see it. Does that look good?
Looks great.
Sarah, we good? Everyone can see it? Great. So good afternoon, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us. My name is Michael Silver, and I greatly appreciate our partnership with Fountainhead and hope that this is a very successful series after our inaugural kickoff today. So quick background on myself and my firm, Focus Partners. We are based in northern New Jersey in Bergen County. And along with my business partner, Eric, have been running Focus Partners for the last 15 years. And all we do every day with our team is coach and consult to advisors, teams, and the firms you all work for. So we're an outside resource. We've known the Fountainhead team pretty much since their inception, and they run a fabulous practice from many different facets of what they do. But our coaching day to day is working with RIAs, independent advisory practices, regionals, wirehouses, boutique wealth managers, a little bit of everything to help you not only run a more organized practice from the practice management and structural side of things, but also to the client acquisition side. So today's topic is all about your value proposition and telling your story. And we think it's critical anytime, but especially in this day and age where there's more and more a virtual component to making sure you can really tell a story that's compelling and differentiated and help separate you from your competition. So by way of an overview, I'm going to talk briefly about why a value proposition is important. What exactly is a value proposition by definition? And there are a lot of interchangeable terms we can use. We could say value proposition, mission statement, elevator pitch, your story, all appropriate. We'll talk about the recipe and the ingredients that go into a top-notch value prop. And then we're actually going to be joined by Bob Branshaw, who's a member of the Fountainhead team on the advisory side, to put him on the spot almost. I mean, he's had a little prep time, but put him on the spot to ask some questions that will be discussed in my presentation today. So first off, why is a value proposition important? I don't care if you're in business for 3 months or 30 years. It's critical to take a step back and make sure you do have a story to tell that helps separate you and decommoditize you from all of your competition out there. When I say competition, that's the number on the screen. There are over 365,000 registered advisors across the country, all vying for that same share of wallet. So when someone says, okay, Michael, nice to meet you. What do you do? Or why should I work with you versus these other groups I've been speaking to? You need to be able to answer with something that's a little bit different and that helps you win that business. So according to Investopedia, which is a site we use a lot for different quotes and definitions, they define a value proposition as the following: a marketing statement that summarizes why a prospect should use your services. This statement should convince a potential client that one particular advisor adds more value or is better at solving a problem than another advisor. Well, that makes sense to me, pretty straightforward. So a couple questions I want to ask you that are different than the kind of recipe questions, but when you think about your story and your value proposition, right? And to me, a value prop is more formal. It's on your website, in your branding and collateral materials, your LinkedIn profile. But if you meet someone watching your kids play soccer, as an example, and say, hey, nice to meet you. What line of work are you in? Or what do you do? Right? You're not going to pull out a sheet of paper and read a big paragraph. but it is something that's baked into all of your branding. So how do you really articulate what you do? And when I say you, it could be you, your team, your firm. How do you position yourself, your team, and your firm when you have these opportunities to present in front of groups of people, formally or informally? Next, why should someone work and trust you over others? And how do you make it about the client or about the prospect or about the center of influence that you're speaking to? We don't like being advisor-centric. We need to be client-centric. So here's what we'll call a benchmark value proposition. And the opposite of that is something that's elevated, or what we'll call the alpha scenario. So I offer financial solutions for high net worth individuals, ... My goal is to understand so that I can earn their trust. I do this, I then create, I follow, my service. You see the theme here? Now, first of all, this is very verbose. And there's some good points, but it's all I, my, or if you're a team, we. That's not what we're looking for. This is advisor-centric. It basically is all about the advisor and what they do. Now, your prospect, your client needs to know what you do, but it needs to be much more about them. So the alpha, and if you all understand alpha, what you do, alpha is outperformance over a benchmark, right? It's used in investment terms. Does a manager provide alpha over just buying the indices? Well, when we think about alpha as coaches and consultants for all of you, what we're talking about is how can you be above the benchmark? How can you be better and differentiated from your competition and all those other advisors I mentioned that are going after the same clients you are? So when we think about an alpha or a kind of a ramped up value proposition, there are 4 key ingredients or questions that put all together form a very strong and robust value proposition. And the bottom line is that it's a unique story, which, like I mentioned, has to be all about the client or prospect or center of influence. So here are the 4 questions. What do you do? How do you do it? Who do you do it for? And ultimately, what are the benefits to that client in working with you, your team, and your firm? Let's dig a little deeper into each of these. When we talk about what do, what are you trying to accomplish for your clients and prospects? You know, I like using a sports analogy. When it's time to hang up the spikes, right? If someone's thinking about retiring, we want to make sure that you can retire and not have to worry about income, that we can replace your earning income with investment income, whatever that might be. You know, what image are you trying to portray? That comes right back to differentiation and what makes you different. So how do you talk about what you do every day? Next, how do you do it? This is where we peel back the onion and talk more about the process. So how do you do what you do? What is your financial planning process? How do you build a portfolio? How do you do asset allocation? How do you holistically look at someone's balance sheet? This is where you get to go in the weeds a little bit and talk about the machinations and the processes that really help make you different and what you do to ultimately help that client and prospect. Next, who do you do it for? This is always a fun one. You know, I met an advisor once when we were talking about niches and target markets. They said, Michael, I just want to work with people that are really nice and really rich. I'm like, that's not so bad. But in general, people do have target markets that they go after. Are you working just with retirement plans and 401ks? Are you working with executives in public companies, small business owners, retired physicians, whatever it might be? And it doesn't matter to me what you go after. Somehow, cold calling in the 90s, I had a niche by finding one client and then getting many referrals over years in the semiconductor business. They were distribution companies of semiconductors. So I had a niche. That's a pretty interesting one. But we work with RIAs and firms that, you know, they specialize in working with athletes and entertainers or only small business owners. The options are endless, but we do firmly believe that you should have target markets that you go after. And then finally, what are the benefits in working with you? How will your clients benefit and be better off by choosing to work with you over someone else? What is your service model? What is your client onboarding process? What do you do to wow and surprise and delight your clients? How do you partner with their estate attorney and their accountant and their private banker, whatever it might be? You really need to show the value that you're offering and delivering from a comparative standpoint so that you do kind of decommoditize yourself from the competition. So those are the 4 questions, and Bob Branshaw, be ready because I might ask you something similar or maybe even those same questions. So this one I am going to read because this to me covers all the bases. Choosing someone to manage your financial life is both a business and personal decision. With over 50 years of combined experience, we have become the trusted advisor to a select group of individuals, families, and organizations. offering personalized strategies that enable them to reach their goals and objectives. We take the time to get to know you and your story and look to foster long-term relationships built on trust, integrity, and honest communication. We act as your personal guides, helping to navigate and simplify the complex world of investing. Our goal is to establish one-to-one relationships and offer you the personal approach you deserve and the depth and expertise you expect. So again, that's long, but this is what goes kind of in writing, right? Your website, your brochure and collateral materials, maybe a pitch book, your LinkedIn profile, things like that. When you're talking to people in more of a public or informal setting, or if it just happens to come up, you're playing golf and says, oh, what line of work are you in? You're going to pull little pieces out of this. I call them snippets and sound bites. You'll customize it as needed. I know you're all muted, but if I could ask a question, I'd say, who remembers Mad Libs? So Mad Libs are these little, and we used to use them with our kids when they're little and we'd go to camp and we needed them to write us a letter. They would just fill in the blanks. My new friend's name is blank. My favorite food I had this week is blank. Well, you can do the same here. Oh, who do you work with? Well, we specialize in working with attorneys. Or someone else, we specialize in working with people that are, on the verge of retirement. There are lots of different ways you can put all these pieces together to form something appropriate for the person or group you're in front of, again, whether formal or informal. So this is what I think, and we've seen lots and lots of these, a very good and robust value proposition. Yes, it does say what the advisory practice or firm does. It says we take the time, we act, our goal. But in my opinion, it covers all four of those questions, and it is very client-centric, and they get a very good feeling for what it is you can offer. So that's the brief presentation I wanted to do, just to introduce you all to this concept of value proposition and telling your story. We could probably talk about it for hours with different examples and questions. But what I'd like to do first is my contact information is up on the screen. If anyone here today is interested, we'd love to offer you a complimentary coaching session. It's a chance to learn about your practice, pick our brains, and share some best practices ideas. So with that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop the screen share here and put the camera back on. And we're going to bring on Bob Branshaw from Fountainhead. And Bob, what I'd like to first ask you to do, actually just give it a second for him to get up here.
Trying to figure out, share my camera.
That's okay. There you go. Hey, Bob.
Okay.
So first off, thanks for joining us. We appreciate you taking time. Can you just give a little introduction, background, kind of your role and what you do on a day-to-day basis?
Sure. Hi, my name is Bob Branshaw. I'm one of the advisors here on the Fountainhead team. I've been in the industry over 17 years now.
Okay. So first question for you, and I'm putting you on the spot today. Hope you don't mind. Yeah, I talked about one of my opening lines was, I don't care if you're in business 3 months or 30 years, it's always good to take a step back and review your story. After your tenure in the business, would you say you love your story, you like it, or sometimes you think, it's good, but I could really think I could always even do a little better?
Well, I mean, first off, you could always do a little bit better, right? But
yeah.
I think, I think we have a great story here at Fountainhead, but to be honest, one thing, me personally, and I know others could work on is just being more consistent. And that's something that, maybe an exercise like this could help with.
Yeah, I mean, we want for any of you on this call today, even for what I do in telling my story every day, like I've done daily for 15 years, I want it to roll off your tongue. Even if you have to change it and pivot quickly when you're in a conversation, everybody on your team representing any of you or yourselves needs to be able to just, at the drop of a dime, tell that story with confidence and conviction, and obviously say it very smoothly and let it roll off the tongue. So what I'd like to do next is talk about those 4 questions I mentioned. So I'm going to ask you one at a time, and you don't have to answer. This is a good exercise for anybody. You don't have to answer in formal sentences. The way I like doing this, the first kind of run at it, is snippets and sound bites, little one-liners that you think are appropriate or descriptors about, to answer each of these questions. So first off, what do you do? If someone said that to you, what do you do?
Yeah. So with the 30-minute notice you gave me of this conversation.
Yeah, sure.
I was kidding. So, a couple of things that jumped out about answers, as I think, first thing I would hone in on is that we are truly an advice-based firm, where we really get to know our clients and what they hope to accomplish.
Okay. What else?
And then from there, we do offer, a broad range of services, going from tax strategies, asset management, retirement planning, to education planning. So we do cover pretty much all the areas of finance.
Right. So you can help people almost in any situation when they say, what do you do?
Correct. And most importantly,
Yeah.
the takeaway I think is that, we want to be our client's first call prior to making any financial decision. We want them to be thinking of us first to help them.
But when a client calls you from the car dealers to say, should I buy or lease, you own that relationship.
I honestly had that one about 2.5 months ago.
Oh, did you really? But now you can't find cars anyway, so it's kind of a moot point.
I just went through with my daughter. It's a train wreck.
Yeah, there's a shortage of inventory. One thing I've heard people say, and realize anything I say or anyone says, you have to make it your own, say it in your own words, you have to be comfortable with it. But I've heard someone say when they talk about what they do is we help people in 3 different stages of the life cycle. When you're young and in your earning and saving years, right? When you're kind of living off of the income in retirement, and then how you create a legacy with those assets. So kind of accumulation, preservation, distribution. That's something that I hear a lot. All right, so next question, how do you do it? How do you do what you do? What are the ingredients to the cooking here?
One of the things, I think that's special about us, to be honest, right, is I think, it's collaborative efforts across the team of specialists. One thing I learned early on in my career was you can't know everything. You can't know and do everything yourself, right? So that's so having a team of specialists that you can partner with, and help out, it definitely makes a difference.
But would you say at the core of what you do for any relationship, is it based around financial planning?
Yes. Yeah. So when it comes to financial planning, right, there's a financial planning aspect and also the investment management, which is a part of what we do.
And the investment management to me is kind of the output of the plan, correct?
Correct. And it could be the engine of, the financial plan, right? Because you need to grow the assets in effort to reach the goals and mitigate risk.
And how do you position, the what we're here to talk about today, right? That Joe mentions the OCIO model. So, you're doing the planning, and then you have this entity, Fountainhead Asset Management, who's in theory you're outsourcing your asset management to investment management. How do you position that to people?
Correct. And just to give, having Fountainhead Asset Management does make our life a lot easier, right? So again, when I talked about learning early on that you can't do everything yourself, right out of the gate, we're definitely not afraid to outsource, and outsourcing our, investment management to Fountainhead Asset Management has definitely helped our practice and me personally. It definitely makes what I do much more scalable and it gives me the time to focus on the relationship and the planning aspects.
Yeah, when I think about the role of any advisor, it's mainly 3 things. It's bring in the relationships, right? Client acquisition. It's service your clients and have retention, and then manage the money. But if you get rid of one of those, meaning the asset management piece, it creates that much more capacity to uptick your service model and spend more time driving new client acquisition.
Correct. And those
critical
parts, and looking back, those are the 2 parts of the job that I love, right? So able to focus on that and outsource the asset management, it makes life easy.
Yeah, it's interesting. I'll see some, I see pitch books and decks that a lot of advisory practices use to show prospective clients and centers of influence like accountants and attorneys who might be referral sources for them. And a lot of them will show their team. But what's interesting is a lot of the people that are, quote, part of the team are resources of their firm. So like you said, leverage other specialists. They're doing that, but they're not part of the core practice. But the positioning of it is we have all these different resources available to you. And I think that's a big part of the selling proposition. So, okay, next, who do you do it for? So whether it's for your firm or just for your practice, how do you identify niches and target markets? And if you don't mind sharing, what are some of those groups that you really have expertise with?
Sure. And as an advice-based firm, the people that we can really help are, those established professionals and individuals that are really focused on, building and growing. They could be anywhere from there. We really don't have minimums or I'd say a target age, but if it's professionals looking to build and grow, we have clients that range from their mid-30s to late 60s. And
what about industries or professions? Because that's broad.
And when you break it down, it's probably I would say corporate executives, small business owners, and majority families.
Okay, that's fine. And like the value prop example I showed, I think it said, in individuals, families, and business owners or something like that. Other people just work with entrepreneurs. The world is your oyster, as they say, when you decide who you want to go after. And once you get a couple clients in that niche, then they refer you to their friends or colleagues in that niche, and it just it could really grow exponentially over time, I think. All right, the last of those 4 ingredients is, what are the benefits? So when I ask that question, I'm a prospective client. I say to you, all right, great, I understand what you do and who you're doing it for. But if I work with you, what are the benefits to me? So you can answer it alone on behalf of your team, or obviously on behalf of your firm. So what's in it for me, essentially?
Yeah, no, I think one of the biggest things we do is provide our clients with peace of mind, right? So, I mean, everyone's educated and successful, right? But they have their own day-to-day activities to worry about. So, they can focus on, in their lives, knowing that their financial house is in order and that it's taken care of by Fountainhead.
That's almost like instead of the OCIO model, it's the outsourced family office, right? Go do what you're good at. Either go play more golf because you're retired, or go run your successful business. Know that we're in the background. Rest assured, we're in the background managing your money and dealing with your cash flow and whatever it might be. And that gives them peace of mind to do what they want to do.
Yeah, because they know if anything comes up, we're just a phone call away, and we touch our clients at least anywhere from 6 to 8 times a year, minimum.
So when you're talking to a prospective client, do you explain your service model? Do you map out what their expectations are and manage it for them?
Yes, we give them an idea of what it looks like, pretty much from onboarding through, right? Because you go from onboarding to the first 6 months, we're probably talking to them at least once a month, until they're on board and comfortable. And then at some point in transition, and every two clients are the same, but some people, we at least talk to quarterly and do reviews, and then we'll have a planning and tax planning meeting. So that's kind of where we end up. The first 6 months of the year, it's probably monthly. And then once they settle in and are comfortable, it's more, quarterly.
Gotcha. Okay. And then this is a tougher question. Why you? And when I say you, it's you, your team, your firm. Someone says, okay, Bob, I understand what you're saying. I like what you're saying, but our friends referred us to their group across town, and someone at my office had me speak to one other team, but I like what you're saying so far. Sell me a little here. Why you?
I guess my picture doesn't do it.
But it does. Sold.
No, I mean, I think, we're real people. We've walked in our client shoes. We're comprised of myself. My prior life, I was a, corporate executive. We're made up of business owners. So we've truly know and have experienced what our clients are, heading into. And, we really have a team of depth and experience. And again, when it comes down to specialists, my background is more tax planning and, financial planning. With that being said, if I come across a small business owner, I can easily just call, my partner Mark or someone else to come in and help, right? So, as a client of Fountainhead, as a client of mine, you're a client of the firm, right? So we just share all of our resources.
Okay.
And, again, we have the scalability with access to Fountainhead Asset Management. That's where we can really focus on our client relationships, servicing and growing the business. Where that came in huge, last March, if there's no way we'd have been able to service our clients through this pandemic and manage the assets at the same time. Having that ability to know that the assets were taken care of in such a critical time, we're able to really have the time to be able to focus on our relationships.
Gotcha. Okay, that makes sense to me. Those are all my questions. Is there anything I didn't ask you wanted to be asked?
I think that sums it up.
That's your limit. All right. So I appreciate you taking the time, some good thoughts and ideas there, and it's always a good exercise to review your story. So what I'm going to do now is hand it back to Joe, I believe, so we can open it up for questions. Two different types of questions. If you have questions for me, I'm happy to address them, or for Joe Halpern, who, CIO for Fountainhead Asset Management, if you have questions for him about their OCIO model, to help free you all up to go focus on, acquisition and service. But everybody, thanks for your time. Joe, I'll give it back to you.
Okay, Bob Branshaw, thank you very much for being the guinea pig there and taking some questions from Michael Silver. That was informative. And thank you, Michael. Are there any, I believe everybody's on mute, but you probably could either be unmuted or you could put it in the Q&A. Does anybody have a question for Michael? It could be on telling your story, or it could be anything related to scale.
Joe, while we're waiting to see if there are questions, define scale. When you say scale, what do you mean?
So what I mean It's a great question, and I'm not going to do as good a job as Investopedia did when you put it up in one line. So I'm going to take a little bit more than a line to define it. But what I define a skill as the ability to grow a business as large as you'd like to grow it. And so if you use that definition, if someone wants to grow it to, let's say, $10 million, they don't need much infrastructure for that. You probably could do that with your phone and call it a day and get yourself up to 10. The problem is a lot of people run into issues either on a client level. Well, I'll say they all run into issues on how many clients you have. And that's where scale really starts taking an effect, right? So even the other day, I met with an advisor. I asked, how many clients do you have? They said 110 clients. Awesome, 110 households. How many meetings a year do you have? 110 households. Easy 220 calls, meetings a year. And COVID was kind of helpful in that way, in that a lot of the meetings now can be done on Zoom as opposed to in person. But with 110 clients, and if you're trying to do your job and really get in front of them, and Bob mentioned that in the beginning you're meeting monthly and then you go to quarterly. Well, 110, if you're really meeting, and I think most advisors don't meet all their clients 100, I think they ABC them, right? So let's even be conservative and say it's 3 meetings a year. That's 330 meetings. That's 1.5 meetings a day. And then you have to prep for the meeting. If you're doing the investment management yourself, you got to do the trade. So you got to do trading. You need to watch the market. So I don't know when you're doing that. I'm not sure when you're eating lunch. I'm not sure what you're doing, a lot of other things. So, but that all goes into skill. How do I get it beyond, right, that 110 clients? And then the second part of skill is how big are my clients, right? So if you have 110 clients and they average $400K a client, we're talking about $45 million. If you have 110 clients and they average $3 million a client, well, that's pretty exciting. That's $330 million. It's really hard to just provide model portfolios to a $3 million client. You got to do a little bit more than that. So then the next question begs, well, what are the services you're offering? Which goes back to, Michael, your point of differentiation, like how you're selling. So really, really long-winded, and I apologize for that. But ultimately skill to me is, how do you get the business to the size you want, and what kind of infrastructure and services do you need to do that? You have a different opinion?
And Joe, if I can just add to that for you, from my seat, looking at what you do, right, as a CIO or an outsourced CIO for other advisory practices, the way to scale your business is to hand off something like what to you, for you to do what you're an expert in, and let the advisors, like Bob mentioned, just focus on servicing your existing client base and then allocating time towards client acquisition. That's it. Outsource one piece, gives you the scale to focus on the other things. That's how I see it.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. And when it comes back to Bob, right, Bob wants to be able to walk into that meeting, and it comes down to how much time do you have to prep when you have a new client? How much time do you want to prep when you're going back to a client for the 10th time? And if you have your story right, your value proposition right, and all that stuff, you actually don't need to spend any time on it. But the working on versus working in the business, if all you're doing is running around and meeting clients and throwing them into portfolios and doing everything, you have no time to step back and explore what you just explored with Bob, which is like, well, what's your story? Do you have it written down? Do you have an email template? And it's amazing because you just have to take the patience and the time to work on it to get your story right, so that it saves you this immense time at the end. And that's part of the scale story, right? Part of the scale story is just having all your ducks in a row so that you could be extremely efficient with your time.
I agree.
I feel like we're talking a little gospel here. Are there any questions for Michael from anybody else? Any other attendees on the call? And sorry for the background noise. I'm right in the middle of Manhattan.
Yeah, if anyone has questions, but they'd rather ask on a one-off basis, please feel free to reach out. Happy to have a conversation offline.
Yeah, so I think maybe we'll end this with one question for you, Michael, just in terms of value proposition, differentiation. What are some of the areas you see working nowadays? You're speaking to advisors all day, every day. You went over niche, which is interesting, and I think that's a personal preference. But when it comes to really getting your value prop to the client, what are some of the value props you see that resonate? And then I'll take it a step further in the own interest of what we do here, which is outsource chief investment office, right? How do people position that leverage that they get by outsourcing to an institutional level CIO who has the full spectrum of services and can compete against anybody? Like, how would you put that? How would you verbalize that for the advisor?
Great. Okay, so those are two questions. So number one, as far as the value prop, I mean, I see everything. And in general, most of them cluster together, that they're very good, but they're very similar. I would say, if I had to answer your question right now, I would say, I think the value props to me that are the most differentiated are practices that are extremely deep in a niche. So there are two I can think of in particular. And because they're so deep in a niche, it enables them to have a value prop that's different from anybody. So, or not anybody, but then most. So I work with a couple of practices that are specifically working in sports and entertainment. And their value proposition is, we understand the intricacies of what you do in your industry. We do not go at this alone. We are working with your agent, with your entertainment attorney, with your business manager, with your bookkeeper, to run everything about your financial life, from your debit and credit cards to, having your paychecks come in ACH and funding your savings account and your day-to-day living account. And to me, that's different, right? It's a very deep dive because of the niche, which makes the value prop different. I have someone else that works, it's almost like a venture services group, as an example, right? So very niche. They're working with venture capital funds. And when there are liquidity events, whether through acquisition or IPO, all the funds for all the partners and the founders and the stockholders go through this team. And obviously the goal is they capture those assets. So those are two quick examples. I could come up with more, but hopefully that answers that question. Your other question about institutional, outsourced, CIO work, I think part of that story for an advisor might be, look, I can't be a jack of all trades, yet a master of none, right? Know what you're good at, know what you're not good at. When I was an FA, I was great at the business development side of things. I loved building relationships and networking and servicing my clients. I knew early on that I was not going to read 10Ks and 10Qs and analyze, balance sheets and earnings statements. So luckily I realized that. So I used third-party managers. Let them manage the money. They have the buy discipline. They have the sell side discipline. So I think it's important for advisors that do outsource to just be transparent about it. This is what I'm good at. This is my role. And this is the expert I leverage for this piece of the pie. That's probably how I would say it.
Okay, excellent. So thank you once again, Michael, and thank you everybody who joined. As a reminder, this was our first one. We are going to be doing these monthly. It's all about exponential growth. It's all about scaling a business. I invite anybody on the call to email either myself or Michael in terms of something you may want to hear on this call. They're all going to be set up kind of the same way, where Michael will make a bit of a presentation, and then we'll workshop it with an advisor. So we're really excited about this, and looking to see you all soon. Have a great day.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Joe.